we did want to turn our attention to a story that's been dominating a lot of conversation around the dinner table and a lot of WhatsApp groups over the last 48 hours. Events at Ballyforan in Roscommon during the week, where a referee was involved in an incident where he had to be brought off to hospital after the game, an under-17 match between St Aidan's and St Dominic's. There's further fallout from it this morning. It now seems like all of this weekend's Roscommon football championship games are going to be postponed. There was a meeting, it appears, last night, and referees in the county have opted to go on strike until Sunday midnight following the incident in Ballyforan during the week. So that's where that's at. We're going to be joined on the line in a few moments' time by inter-county referee David Gough. Delighted to say that we are joined in studio by another inter-county referee, Martin McNally. Good morning to you, Martin. Thanks for coming in.
Morning, lads. How are you?
Good. This story was something we weren't sure how to approach. We did feel as if we needed to have a conversation about it, so thanks a million for coming in, because I think it's important that at this time, and even further to the developments this morning, that we hear from people who are at the front line of it as such, and we're conscious as well that we need to let justice, sporting and potentially otherwise, take its course. So there's a gap in the video, and we might let whatever justice that arises over the next few days and weeks fill that gap, and we'll be conscious of that as we pick through it as well. Your thoughts when you saw the video?
Yeah, look, at obviously the version that we've seen is I suppose shielded a little bit from potentially what happened, but yeah, it, I suppose, disgust is the overwhelming I suppose feeling from, I suppose, every referee in the country, because that could have been any of us. And you know, I suppose you don't think about it until you see something like that. It brings it very much home to you know, to I suppose realise that, yeah, you know, as I said, it could have been anyone, and like, no referee goes out to spend 60-70 minute game, you know, ending up in hospital at the end of it, you know. So they all go out to do their job to the best of their ability, and it was just very sad to see what happened the other night. I'm
looking at stats here in front of me, Martin, and like, I think these stats came from Dr. Noel Brick from Ulster University. Like nearly 95% of 438 GAA referees surveyed experienced verbal abuse. 23% reporting physical abuse. Like, I was texting you about this incident yesterday, and you used that word disgusting. Were you surprised, or is it not that surprising?
It's not that surprising. I suppose what Noel Brick in the University of Ulster has done, you know, that's, you know, it's an incredible body of work that they've done, and I know that the GAA have contributed in some of those facts and figures. They've worked at it, and the GAA have not hid behind this. We all know, we're very aware that it happens out there. But until now, until Noel Brick took this body of work on, there hasn't been any meat on the bone in terms of numbers and figures. Now we have something to work with, and we've stats to improve. I suppose the interesting thing that Noel did was he compared them to figures within other sports, so soccer in Ireland and soccer in mainland Europe as well. And our figures are a little bit higher than them, you know, but they're not. You know, they're not massively different. So I suppose for the first time ever, we actually have figures to work with, and we have a target. Now we have a target. You know, it doesn't matter what you're in, if you're in business or whatever, you need a target. So now we have a target, and we have something to work with, and we have something that we can improve on. You know, is it going to be an overnight fix? No. How do we fix it? Well, you know, that's the next question. You know, there's an action plan to be put in place now to see what the next step is to improve that, because ultimately, you know, we want to improve the respect for officials out there, and we want to improve the spectacle. You know, we want people, spectators, young kids, young adults who are playing the game to have a good experience of our sport, and not have any negative impact as a result of it. And we're just not talking officials here. You know, the abuse out there, you know, I suppose we've moved on to a whole new level of abuse now with cyber abuse, you know, online. And, you know, I suppose it's important to remember, yes, we're focusing on referees here at the moment, but managers, players are all subject to this, you know, and it just depends what time of the year and what the incident is on who's been the target of that abuse.
It's a bad culture of it out there. What's your lived experience, because like the one thing that I've been able to establish over the last 24 hours was, and it wouldn't have taken a rocket scientist, there does appear to have been physical contact. The nature exactly of that, there's loads of different reports about exactly what that is, and we'll let that be established, but there was physical contact. Have you had that in your experience?
No, I've never experienced physical interference or any type of physical abuse. I've received the verbal, and I don't think. I think Shane highlights the stats there. They're in the 90% mark. So that nearly puts everybody in the bracket that have been abused verbally. We want to improve on that. We definitely want to improve on it. But in terms of the physical, no. And we are talking. We are talking about physical abuse incidents. They are so much in the minority. I know the figures there that Noel has come out with, but we're talking thousands and thousands and thousands of games within the association, both in Ireland and abroad. Like the GAA is a worldwide organisation. So, but it's the numbers that Noel has come out with now that gives us a target to improve on that, and I think that the GAA, I know there's an appetite and I know there's a momentum, and I suppose maybe that momentum now is even stronger than ever after what happened the other night to come up with a change, and there's new energy. And I think that's not just within the refereeing circles, that's within the GAA community, that there's an appetite and there's a willingness to try and improve what we're witnessing here at the moment.
David Gough, good morning to you.
Good morning, guys. How are we?
Good. Martin's just been outlining his thoughts on the clip. Disgusted but not surprised, I think, sums it up. Your view?
I suppose it's frightening when sitting down and thinking about it last night. I don't think in all my years of refereeing, going to an underage game or a club game in Meath, that anywhere in my thought process for the match that evening that I was worried for my physical safety or any potential danger on the pitch. It never came in to my mindset at all. And I'm just thinking about the referee in question, who probably left his family, like most of us would, on an evening, picked up a couple of umpires maybe for a midweek game and went to the match, laughing, joking, having fun with his umpires, and walked out there thinking, it's a minor game, there's no threat to me or to anyone else. But to leave the field and in an ambulance is a shocking end to what's supposed to be a very enjoyable pastime for a referee, and it certainly has never reared its head for me in club games in Meath. I've never felt in any sort of danger or of physical abuse or altercation. And I think it's a sad day for the association, albeit, as Martin has rightly pointed out, an isolated incident. We don't have the data to back up, how many physical assaults there are on match officials, but of the thousands and hundreds of thousands of club games, school games, college games that go on within any GAA calendar year, it's very rare we hear of this type of situation.
David, I remember we did a Saturday panel on Off the Ball, I think it was back in 2018, where we were discussing referee abuse, and by chance the day before the panel, news broke of a referee being kept in his dressing room, locked in his dressing room for 20 minutes during Donegal under 14 match for his own safety. Now that's 4 years ago. The infamous incident in the Leinster final, of course, 12 years ago. Are the GAA learning here? Is enough being done? Are there enough supports for referees who might be suffering online abuse, verbal abuse, physical abuse? Or what's your take on how it's being handled?
Well, first of all, I'd say those things are sometimes reported on no different than what we're speaking about this morning. But the very nature of the GAA is that an inter-county player will get injured next week, or there'll be a new appointment in Donegal or Monaghan, and the media train moves on, and it's quite often quickly forgotten, and very little is done in follow-up to it. And you're right to mention those incidents, albeit them isolated incidents. Have the GAA learned? I don't think that they're turning a blind eye to this. I think I have looked at their strategic plan for the next 4 years, the 2022 to 2026 strategic plan, and they've come out and said that they're looking at greater recruitment and retention of referees, greater investment of referees, and have listed as one of their desirables greater respect, to garner greater respect for match officials. My problem is we see all these strategic plans, and they've been there since 2015, and they're like a wish list of things that the GAA would aspire to do over the coming 3 years. But very often those plans are left on the shelves, and they're very rarely enacted with any real or meaningful backup to them. And, you know, optimising respect for match officials, what are they going to do about that? What have they done in the past? We can look at the Give Respect, Get Respect initiative that was rolled out, which is a lovely slogan if everybody understands it. But it is only an initiative. It is up to the players, the managers, the match officials to sign up to that. And if they don't, well, there's no sanction as a result of it.
It sounds like you're saying that Croke Park could be doing an awful lot more.
I think they could be, but I think it's a difficult fix. It's not something that's easy. It is, as I see it, coming from an educational point of view, an educational fix. We need to get in at the under 8s, the academies, the under 10s, and we need to be rolling out educational programs to those kids about optimising match respect or respect for match officials, because that's where it needs to start. That's where the culture change needs to start. And if you can get the mindset right with children and underage, it'll eventually roll over in 6 to 8 to 10 years' time. But it is that education, because far too often our coaches, our GDOs are quite very well versed and skilled in upskilling the children in the skills of Gaelic games. But if you ask anyone what their definition of respect is, you're going to get a different response. There's 4 of us here this morning, and if I asked any of you to define what respect is, we get 4 different responses. And then how to tie that in to what your definition is, to what you would see on a Gaelic football field, is an extremely difficult thing for people to do. So it does take an education piece around that to change the culture.
What about that point, Martin, just in relation to I think Dave makes a very fair point about the news cycle, that there's a bump in this stuff now, and as I said, it's in all the WhatsApp groups. People who don't follow sport are talking about it. It's obviously dominating main news headlines, and that's grand, but that all dies away next week, and you lads are still left there going, right, who's batting for us now?
Yeah, you know, something, you know, I suppose these things have a habit of going down the stream with the next batch of news that comes along. The GAA, I think David's 100% right. The GAA are working on it. They are slightly hamstrung in the sense that they're such a massive organisation, and it's very hard for them to reach out to every little corner of Ireland to fix the issues that are going on, and they're relying on, I suppose, filtering out from Croke Park, going down to the provinces, going down to the county boards, then out to the clubs, and you know, there is an effort going on out there. I think this is actually going to up the ante in terms of the effort that's going on out there. I just want to go back to David's other point there in terms of the education. I think we've a massive asset nationwide, and it's already in place in terms of the Common the Munskol, the GDOs. Every primary school in the country has a GDO going in. I think there's a possibility or an opportunity to use them people and the likes of the Common the Munskol as an educational tool and educate the kids at a very young age, and also in turn bring that education home to the parents. Every young kid has to do their homework with their parents, and let's bring some of that in, that the parents are involved, and you know, we start, I suppose, getting the message out there about the respect of officials, the respect from players to officials, managers, spectators towards officials, and then, you know, when we start slowly, you know, I think everybody who's involved in officiating in GAA games will be held in a higher esteem, and it's as David said, it is a cultural thing, but you know, it is fixable. You're never going to eliminate it. It doesn't matter. You can never legislate for what a human interaction is going to be and a response or reaction like on the pitch, you know. But I definitely think that there's an opportunity there, and it does. Realistically, everything boils back to the education.
The one thing that you would say is that in terms of tackling it, of course, those things you talk about, and it strikes me that and I was delighted to hear you talk about the parents, because I think that is a piece that's as important as anything else in those conversations, because as much as you can do with the education of kids at a younger age group, they're going home, and that's probably the biggest lesson they're getting. But the other thing obviously is where, and speaking generally as opposed to about this specific incident, where a physical altercation is proven and established to have happened, you have to throw the book at that person, right? Like that's the message now that comes out of an incident like this. There's no place for you in our games.
Absolutely, there has to be ramifications for what's after happening. You can never reward bad behaviour, and that's in any form of walk of life. You have to be able. There has to be consequences. If you go down the road and you speed on the M1 at 150 kilometres per hour, there's going to be a repercussion for that. So in every walk of life, there has to be a repercussion. I don't want to get into the nitty gritty of what there should be and what there shouldn't be, because as you said at the outset, there's an ongoing investigation and that. But yes, it doesn't matter what it is. There has to be a consequence for what's happening, and the consequence in this case, I assume, will be quite severe.
There does tend to be a bit of a culture, David, as well, of in GAA, particularly for whatever reason, of kind of ducking and diving, and you take the hit for this and we'll cover up this thing over here, and there does tend to be that sort of a culture of it, and like almost a bit of omerta. You would hope that in an incident like we saw the other night, that there are 30 players on the pitch, God knows how many, maybe 100 people in terms of subs and other coaching staff and people watching it. The onus now is on those people to come forward and say, here's what happened.
Yeah, that would be the honourable thing to do, and you would hope that is what's going to happen. I don't want to comment on an ongoing investigation and the allegation. I mean, we don't know exactly what's happened. I'm sure Roscommon CCC will finish their report and they'll send it into Croke Park. I would imagine that at the highest level, both the Uachtaráin and Archdural are extremely disappointed that this has fallen on the GAA's desk this week, and I think that they would certainly await the report from the CCC before they get involved or make any statements, if they are even going to do that. But it does come back to as you called it, the ducking, the diving, and we see far too often at club level as well as inter-county level, people not owning up and taking responsibility for their actions. We find it extremely frustrating as referees that we implement the rules on the playing field, and then in the boardrooms in the week afterwards, that legal teams can come in and face against GAA volunteer committees and hearings committees, and players get off on all sorts of technicalities, and it's extremely frustrating. And I hope that isn't the case in this instance. I think the honourable thing for people to do is, if they are contacted, to be honest about what they have seen or what they have heard, and let the investigation come to full fruition based on the facts.
Martin, I remember hearing from Brian Gavin, the former intercounty hurling referee, before, and he was talking about the fact that he watches rugby games and he's jealous, like he's envious of the way players talk to referees and the way, I guess, referees talk to players back. Like, do you ever sit and watch other sports, maybe soccer as well, and almost jealous of the way in which referees are treated?
Yeah, there is times, there is times, particularly in rugby, because of the massive level of respect between players and referee happens. Yes, there is times where you would say, gosh, I'd love that to happen in our game. I suppose we're going back to the education and the communication here. A rugby referee will go in and speak with the teams before a match, and there's a rapport between the team and the referee, and they know where they stand before the kickoff even happens in rugby. Likewise in the Premier League, at the start of the season, the managers will come in, the referees' body will come in, and they'll say, right, here's the issues that we had last season, and here's how we're going to combat them. And it's up to you as coaching staff to implement your game plan around these changes that we're going to make to improve our game. The same in Australian football, where the referee speaks with the teams before the game. So it's all down to dialogue and communication. And I suppose, yes, I do get jealous, but sometimes maybe a little bit of dialogue and an openness, and we can learn from rugby in terms of what they do. Can solve a lot of the situations that we have in our game. But we're a different sport. We can't tar every sport with the same brush. And we are a different sport. We are a voluntary organisation. The players, the managers, the officials, we're all voluntary. And it's very hard for us to get the time to treat it like a professional sport. They're all paid to do their job, and they have the time, and they have the schedule. People make a schedule for them to go in and do all these things. But yeah, to answer your question, yeah, at times I am envious of it. Yeah,
I asked David this question already when we chatted a couple of months back, so I'll ask you as well. Should there be some professional referees in GAA?
It depends. I suppose depends what model you would go with. At the minute, I would say no. But if there was an appetite within the GAA for a number of referees down the line, I do see a use for them, where there would be your full-time referees. They would also be involved in coaching and improving the standard of your referees in the provinces and the counties nationwide. They would also be involved in, I suppose, in the off-season stuff. We now have a longer off-season, particularly for inter-county. So in the off-season, they would get, I suppose, a longer and a better opportunity to work with the referees and maybe take, I suppose, some new referees through. But at the minute, I don't think that's something that's on the table. But if it was, there is a use for them. But as I said, the GAA is a voluntary organisation. You know, the employees of the GAA, you know, are necessary for the day-to-day running of it, but I don't think I suppose professional referees are a necessity at the moment.
David, you mentioned the word recruitment there a short while ago. Like, I almost, you're sitting there thinking, how are the GAA going to entice young men and women to get involved and become referees? Like, is that an issue now when young people turn on the news and see incidents like this happening? Is recruitment of referees a major issue at the moment? Is it difficult to get them on board?
Oh, absolutely. And I don't think it's a new phenomenon that we're aware that the recruitment of referees is extremely difficult. The incident during the week is just going to be a further deterrent. If you ask most of the referees, or certainly inter-county referees, how they fell into refereeing, none of them are ever going to say, well, I wanted to be an inter-county referee and referee an All-Ireland football final. It's usually something that happens by accident when a referee doesn't turn up to a game and you're asked to officiate it because you're just a bystander at the pitch and you might know the rules. So recruitment of referees is extremely difficult, and it is a difficult pathway to navigate to get from maybe an underage referee or a minor level referee onto the panel, we'll say, at senior club, onto a provincial panel and onto an All-Ireland panel. And it's very difficult and it's time consuming, and it involves an awful lot of waiting. And unlike being a player, if you're a good minor player or a good under-21 player, you have a straight pathway into the senior county team. If you're a good minor referee or a good under-21 age referee, it takes you a long time to get to senior club within your own county, even longer to get onto a provincial panel, and even further longer to get into an All-Ireland panel. And that because that's just the way the pathway works. So what you end up doing is having good referees in their early 20s who never get near an All-Ireland panel until their mid-30s. And that can be extremely frustrating, a long waiting process. And of course, there's fall-off then. We have a problem with retention because of the length of time it takes to travel that pathway and get to the top, and that can be extremely frustrating. But the recruitment thing is really difficult. We see in most counties now at the moment struggle to get referees in to do the referee course at the beginning of the year. And no games, I'm aware that not many games are falling by the wayside, but that's not because we have a huge volume of referees. It's that we have a dedicated core of referees in most counties that are going out 2, 3, 4 nights a week to officiate. But the GAA is going to have a problem going forward if they don't tackle the respect level and the recruitment level of match officials.
I'm conscious that you both are, particularly with you, David, the noise going on in the background there, you've stuff to get to. So one last one from me, just on the Roscommon. I don't know, were you with us at the start, David, but just to recap from Roscommon this morning, where the games there for the weekend have been postponed as referees have decided to take a step back as events from the other night unfold and investigations continue. Can you understand that mindset?
That's the first I've heard of it, and it would take me back to the events of the Dublin Schoolboys League that happened earlier on this year, and it's unfortunate that it has come to this. I would say that I understand the referees in Roscommon's viewpoint on this, but also I would hope that they would allow due course to take place, allow Roscommon County Board to follow up with their investigation and make their report and let that follow through. I wouldn't like to see an overly big knee-jerk reaction to this. It is one incident, it is being dealt with, and I would hope that those referees will go back refereeing as soon as they're happy with what Roscommon County Board are doing.
Yeah, meeting between referees and board officials held last night, and games to be postponed this weekend. That's the way it's been worded there. David, we'll let you off. Thanks a million.
Thanks very much, guys. Good morning.
Martin, your thoughts on that?
Yeah, look, it's a massive show of solidarity with the referees in Roscommon, and I'm sure it didn't happen without dialogue between the referees board and the Roscommon County Board, and if they felt that was the right thing to do, well, I'm sure that they've gone with it. And I suppose things are a bit raw in Roscommon at the moment. You can imagine what it would be like to be a referee in Roscommon this morning. I can only imagine. And I'm sure things are quite raw down there, and maybe, I suppose, more so than it being I suppose a fallout, I think it's maybe a chance for them to control, alt, delete, and just take a step back and draw a breath from what's after happening, because of a lot of the referees in Roscommon would be personal friends with that man, and I think more so than it being I suppose something to get a reaction, it may just be the right thing to do, and just take a break, and just say, okay, we'll come back at it again in 2 weeks' time. Yeah,
and we wish him obviously a full recovery as well, which is something I should have said much earlier, which is the important part of all of this. Listen, we really appreciate it. We thought it was an important conversation to have, and we appreciate you dropping into us.
Perfect, lads. Thank you.